Hey, everybody, and welcome to our newest project for first responder wellness. No one fights alone. An in depth conversation about mental health and addiction in the first responder space. We're joined by your hosts, Austin Pederson and Josh Adams.
I'm your host, Austin Pederson, sitting here with my co-host, Josh Adams. We're going to sit here today and talk a little bit about, what first responder wellness looks like, how we're moving forward over the last few years. But first off, I want to introduce Josh and kind of hear a little bit of your backstory and where you started in law enforcement, kind of how you got to where you are today, and then maybe some things that you're instilling in your department that are pretty revolutionary.
Very good. Again, name's Josh. I am 45 years old. I have four amazing daughters that are 20-year-old twins, a 16 and a 14, and they keep me happily busy and like to spend lots of my money, which is
Happily busy or happily stressed, right?
well, probably happily busy more than happily stressed. I'm pretty lucky that way. They're squared away. They've got good life goals and ambitions, and they don't chase boys too hard. And the things that I always dreaded it when they were young, they're doing better than I expected. So I'm grateful for that. I've been in law enforcement for, let's see, 23 years now. I started. I spent about my first year as kind of a part time reserve status, because back then getting into law enforcement was super competitive, and you were almost involved in an internship, if you will, called a reserve officer, where they kind of got to see how you were and see how you mixed in with people and handled things before they offered you a real job. And most of that was usually free, so you'd work one or two shifts a week for free, basically, so that they would maybe someday give you a paid job.
What year was that?
So we're talking 1999.
Because today, I was talking to a friend of mine out of St. Paul, and they said I think they used to average maybe 500 applicants for like 20 jobs, and
Yeah,
they just this year they averaged 20 applicants for 40 jobs.
yeah, that sounds pretty true, and that's a good conversation for us to have too. Is kind of what's happening with the job market overall and how that's directly impacting uh, the first responder space, and how drastically it's impacting policing in particular is quite a moment that we're in right now. I But yeah, I started working in here in Utah in 2000, full time in 2000, and I was just a regular beat cop patrolman, working weekend graves, just as happy as I could be. Uh, Newly married, thought I had the world by the back of the neck, and enjoying that era in my career where it's like I can't believe they're paying me to do this. This is a racket. This is fun. Everything's good. And then through my career, I moved through as a canine handler for about 5 years. Really enjoyed that opportunity. I left that to go be part of an anti-cartel drug task force for about 2 years,
In
and
Utah?
in Utah, yeah,
Okay.
and then from there moved to transfer. I got promoted actually and became a road sergeant, frontline supervisor. Did that for a little bit and really really enjoyed it. It was probably what I look at as probably the part of my career I learned the most in.
The glory days.
Well, the glory days for me would have been back when, new and not having a care in the world and stuff, but being back on the street and having a group of, 8 people in a crew, and being uh, not just responsible for myself now, but responsible for them on not just on an accountability responsibility level, but feeling that, I want them to succeed, and caring about them, and them bringing their professional and private problems to work or to me, and trying to just lead that little group along with the different personalities and so forth. That was a lot of growth for me there.
Yeah, now it's 100 and something.
Yeah, yeah. So now it's a whole different ball game
Yeah.
where it's and it's kind of, sometimes it's kind of it's sad that how hard it is to try and keep track of people and their stuff and everything like that. Where it's like, I want to know how they're doing. I want to be more involved in stuff, but at the end of the day, it's just like, man, I don't have the bandwidth to keep track of that many people and their everything all the time.
Their personal lives,
Yeah,
their marriages, their kids,
yeah,
yeah.
and who's getting married and who's getting divorced and who's having kids and who's
Yeah.
happy and who's sad and stuff. And that's one of the things I'm really trying to work beyond, is being able to understand those things, or be made aware of those things, to be able to have a better impact versus, hey, here's the top 10 bad situations going on right now, versus, hey, I'd rather know that there's not a top 10 bad situations, but here's 10, 12, even 20 warm situations that we need to, let's address them before they turn into a hot mess. So, but those were good experiences for me. From there I transitioned to, I was a special victims detective for a number of years. I did child sex abuse, child homicide. I did ICAC, ICAC stuff, so internet crimes against children,
And that's
cyber
the
exploitation, child porn.
that's the tough. I mean, you've seen some stuff there,
Yeah,
I'm guessing,
yeah.
and surprisingly stuff that from people that you probably never thought.
No, yeah,
You know,
that's just it. Is it's and it's, it that in and of itself is a completely different animal to try and work through, and it causes some real challenges for, I think, everybody that is involved in it.
well, I mean, do you think that you start to look for the worst in people right then? Like that changes your view on how you view people after you've seen what people are capable of, maybe.
Yeah, for like, as a direct representation of that, I found myself at a point to where I couldn't go to the shopping mall with my kids, or go to Target, or any of those things that are just normal, because I would see a dad or a male interacting with some young kids, and my first uh, instinct was to, you know, he's probably touching them, or
Yeah.
is he filming them in the bathroom? Is he teaching them how to do sex acts on one another and stuff like that? And these are just regular schmoes that are out with their kids, grabbing groceries or buying jeans or something, and
Yeah.
in order to not have those reactions, it was more like, okay, go hide, don't go to the store, don't do those things, and detach yourself from the public, because every time you see a family, you're seeing, what you're looking at is, you're viewing that dad, and even sometimes the mom, is, hey, these are people that are perping on these kids.
Well, I mean, it makes sense if you're seeing it every day, and especially from people you never thought would have. How can you not go?
Yeah,
I mean, that's the difficulties of the job,
yeah, yeah,
right?
yeah, and having no tools to manage that
Yeah.
was definitely not healthy, for me personally, but also for many of the people that were kind of my colleagues in that space.
Well, nobody had the tools, right? Like that back then. Do you think?
No, I mean, there was a program that existed for a while on, I believe it was a federal level, where they would, if you were one of these task force affiliates with ICAC, they would basically have you get a some sort of a mental health evaluation done. I want to say on an annual basis. That got cut out with federal budgetary things. I think it was,
Because it wasn't important.
recession, things like that, where it's like that was something that they cut out. So that kind of went by the wayside. Leaving it to people at their home agencies, departments, and whatever that culture is to get it done. Obviously, without any encouragement or mandates and realistically any support to address any of those issues. So by and large, I would say that I was in the normal where did nothing about it. Just went to work with the concept of work hard, stay busy,
Yeah.
and you'll be fine. So I did that. Got promoted again several years later and worked as promoted to a lieutenant. I was a watch commander over our patrol division. I wasn't in that one for particularly long because I was shifted back over to be a lieutenant in our detective division, essentially kind of running the day-to-day operations of our investigations group.
Okay. So what city were you working for at this
In
point in
Orem,
time?
Utah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Orem.
So that was that whole series of changes and dynamics and stuff occurred over about a 17 and a half year period. And during the last 10 years of that, I was dabbling in going to school, trying to chip away getting a degree, which was something that was very, for lack of a better word, kind of a selfish goal of my own to prove that I wasn't the dumb kid that I had grown up believing I was.
Gotcha.
So,
And I mean, was this to continue in law enforcement, or was
no,
it?
it was realistically that goal was for me to be able to. I mean, what it did is it meant I was the first kid from my family to ever graduate college, but it was also me being able to kind of thumb my nose at the people beginning in first grade that thought I was dumb and had a learning disability and just some of that those little stupid things that form in our young brains.
Oh yeah, we carry with it the rest of our lives.
And struggling with different topics of curriculum in high school and stuff. Having to repeat. I think I had to take geometry 3 times before I passed it. Just really feeling like, hey, I know I'm not stupid, but I don't feel like I'm smart. And in fact, one of the reasons, I mean, I grew up thinking being in law enforcement would be an awesome job, but I'm like, I'm just not smart enough. I can't be smart. I can't do what those guys do. I kind of transitioning into adulthood, I viewed myself as I was probably going to be in the construction industry, be it a trade of some sort, and college not really being an economic path for me and my family and so forth. So, I chipped away. It took me about 10 years to knock out my bachelor's degree, which I said was kind of for me to, I guess, prove to myself that I'm smarter than I realistically really am to this day, probably. And then what happened from there was, I was in this administrative level position. Things were kind of tough. I was experiencing a lot of burnout, not motivated. Having the ability, I'm 17 and a half years into my career. I can retire at 20. And next door in Linden, Utah, the opening for it's a much smaller community with only 15 police officers, but it's a very nice, friendly, clean, upscale community where the policing is far less intensive and so forth, just based on the community that it is. Their police chief's job opened. I applied for it kind of on a whim.
Did you think you were going to get it?
No, I didn't think I was going to get it. I wasn't really even, honestly, it was kind of a what the hell 11th hour decision I'll throw in for it. And I did fairly well in the selection process to where I was actually offered that job. And so I left Orem and moved, 3 miles down the street to work in Linden and had a wonderful experience there. I was there for about 3.5 years. And again, just a great experience for me, as far as, hey, this is a great parachute ride to retirement, so to speak.
Yeah. And you're 20 years in at this point.
I'm getting close to 20, so I'm moving. My 20 would have been in 2020. May 1st of 2020 would have been my 20-year mark, and so and I kind of made no secret of, hey, this is kind of what my intent is as I moved through that experience in Linden.
Yeah.
And but that time, that era, is where a lot of my own issues really, really, really started to manifest.
Yeah.
And a lot of struggles really, really started to manifest. And my inability to handle things really started to become a big issue.
So are we talking stress? Are we talking, depression?
No, it wasn't
just,
stress. I mean, that's the irony of it, is this was far less stressful than running the detective division in the bigger city next door.
Yeah.
Most of the crime and stuff in Linden is smaller misdemeanors and things like that. There's very
Petty
little
thefts.
Yeah, not a lot of high stress stuff going on, and it's a very supportive community and stuff like that. So I'm not waging political wars or anything like that. The government of the city is very supportive of the police officers, and the finances are very positive and things like that. So there wasn't a lot that was kind of where the change was for me. Is that now I'm in this nice new building. I have an administrative assistant. I've got a secretary out here. I've got these guys that are all doing well and working and so forth. I'm not fighting for budget. I'm not doing any of these things, and that's where a lot of the previous 17 years of different events, really started to catch up to me. And because my coping mechanism or strategy had been work harder. The harder you work, those things stay behind you. So I was basically just running to stay ahead of my own issues, and for lack of a better term, sitting down in that office, I had nowhere to run anymore. And so playing the hare, the tortoise caught up.
Yeah.
And I couldn't get rid of it. And it really, and it was kind of scary for me, because I didn't know what was going on. I just knew that there were times I would be sitting in a meeting or something, and all of a sudden I would have to excuse myself, get out of there. Sometimes mid-meeting, even get in my vehicle and go for a drive, and I would just sob. And it's like, I don't even know why. I don't know what's wrong. I don't know who I can talk to. All I know is it's like I'm burning through a roll of toilet paper out in my car, trying to figure out what's going on. But then after, I could purge like that, and then I could usually go back and be okay.
Yeah, you're able to get those emotions out, then hide them right when you go back in.
Yeah, but still be puzzled with, well, what was that? Why am I having these outbursts of sadness and things like that? And things got and started experiencing that triggered a lot of things in my marriage, and so that started to take a turn, and just kind of everything felt like I didn't feel like there was any solid ground. I couldn't find any solid ground to stand on anywhere. I didn't feel, if you will, safe at work. I didn't feel safe at home. I didn't feel safe to feel anything, but I was feeling all of this stuff.
Yeah, and you're not talking from like the physical sense. You're talking from the emotional sense, right?
I mean, I'm fine. I was healthy as a horse. Yeah. I was, I was in some of the best shape I've ever been in my life, frankly. I was cycling. I had just done a couple of half marathons. I was, I was in the gym every day. I was doing the stuff to take care of my body. But at the same time, there was just that weight and everything like that of whatever, and not knowing how to handle it. I knew I couldn't continue on the way I was going, and then I start having the questions, well, do I even want to continue on? What do I even want to do? What do I want to be? Do I want to be around? Do I want to, and to where the fantasy, if you will, was I just want to disappear. I
Yeah.
don't want to be here anymore. And eventually I reached out to a person I had in the mental health community, a psychologist who is a saint. She actually ran a part of the public health, mental health system in this area for a number of years and was an administrator for most of that time. So she wasn't, day-to-day practicing clinician. But when she retired from that space, she, as I recall, kind of decided, hey, I kind of want to keep my foot in the game. And she had like 1 or 2 days a week that she would see patients.
Mm-hmm.
I reached out to her. Well, I did the classic thing I think a lot of us can relate to, where it's like I called, made an appointment, called back and canceled it. Then I called again, made an appointment, called back and canceled it. And it was the third one that I actually got there. And I went in and I sat down in her, you know, on the couch. She's sitting
The
in her
famous
chair.
couch of
Yeah,
every therapist.
Yeah, I kind of thought it was going to be one of
Yeah.
those, whatever, the loungers or whatever.
Yeah,
But no, it was just a regular old leather
she
couch.
didn't make you lay down.
Yeah, no, and, but I sat down and, door closed. It's just she and I don't even know that we said anything. And I just began to once again sob. And it was for damn near the entire hour, and no talking. And then, towards the end, I guess I must have rallied enough to be able to be like, hey, you know,
Help.
let me put some words to whatever the hell that was as best
Yeah.
I can type thing. And really I went to her like, hey, I don't, I'm screwed up. Who should I see? What do I do type thing? And she's like, I'll work with you.
Yeah.
And that began a process of about a year and a half of almost every week, spending an hour with her and deconstructing, if you will. There were some things from the childhood. There were some issues there, but from a trauma sense, what she taught me was that, hey, when you experience a traumatic event and you don't handle it correctly, and you just push to compartmentalize it, so to speak, encapsulate it, entomb it, whatever, and move on and just keep running, so to speak. Those encapsulations don't go away, and in fact they accumulate until it really becomes it's almost like they're bricks in a wall that keep building this wall higher and higher, and where peace and wellness is on the other side of that wall, but you've got all these trauma blocks that are stacked up that are now dividing you from that peace and wellness in your life. And so over the course of, like I said, about a year and a half, we deconstructed, 17 years of work-related traumas, going backwards to what was, from a professional and personal combined catalyst for all of this was in August of 2001. My older brother, who's 15 months older than me, and was also a police officer. He was a year ahead of me, so to speak. He was my mentor. I followed in his footsteps. He was shot and killed on a traffic stop here in Utah, and at 26 years old, as a dad of a 7-month old son, and dealing with that. At that time, my wife was pregnant with our twin daughters, and we had just barely purchased our first, crappy house that needed to be renovated, and all of this stuff. And anyway, that event was clearly a big deal, and it was obviously very traumatic for me, but there was nothing done with that.
Yeah.
I was, again, that's probably when I really came out of the blocks, so to speak, to be on this. Hey, I'm going to be on this eternal sprint to stay ahead of my issues because 20 years ago, stoicism ruled the day, and you know there was no from my department. The contact I got from my chief of police, the only contact I got from my chief of police at the time, was a voice message on my landline phone at my place.
Like, hey, how you okay? Is he
Yeah,
at work on Monday?
sorry,
Yeah.
whatever. He didn't. It wasn't coming up to the hospital when it wasn't coming over to my home. And I had some supervisors that did do that, but as an from the top kind of a thing. And there wasn't any there's never any of that, and I was well aware of the fact that mental health, and quoting a supervisor that was in my department at that time. I met with her not too long ago and was chatting about just visiting and talking about wellness things and everything like that. And she remembered the direct quote from this chief of police at that time of, if you need that kind of help, this isn't the right kind of career path for you.
Yeah.
And that was very much the culture and outlook. So it's like getting professional help for that never even crossed my mind, because that was taboo, for lack of a better.
It wasn't an option.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we don't do that.
Yeah.
We buck up, and so and with everything, and I mean, I was given the 3 days off that somebody gets for bereavement if a close family member dies, and I was back to work.
Shit.
And things were incredibly raw. They were either incredibly raw or numb at best. And about a week and a half after my brother's death, I was working, and I was backing some other officers on a traffic stop. They were getting some kids out of a car for drugs, what have you. I don't recall. And one, you know, 20-year-old, something like that kid that got out of the car on the passenger side, and I'm kind of attending to him, so to speak. He sees my nameplate, my name, and is like, "Hey, are you related to that Adams that was killed over in Lehigh?" And I was like, "Yeah, he's my brother." And he then starts to basically passively aggressively talk shit about my brother, and I came completely unhinged.
Yeah.
I probably would have killed him if I could have, if the officers that were with me, my coworkers, would not have immediately saw uh, me pop
Like the
and
look in your eyes.
intervene.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it was coming out of my mouth, with both barrels, and they basically took me and pulled me back and stuck me in a police car and drove me to the police department. Right in the middle of why we're trying to do, arrest some people, whatever. Now they're dealing with, basically they've got to secure their coworker and put him
Yeah.
on ice so that he doesn't, you know, do something horrendous. And
Yeah.
they went and put me in the
I mean,
squad room.
were you known as a hothead when you were in
No,
younger days? No.
no, like I struggle sometimes with anger, and and
Yeah, I
and
think we all
and
do.
part of my, and I can my inner circle at work and stuff, they know how to handle it better than, say, other people at work, where they hear a situation come up in a meeting or whatever, and they know that it's something where I'm probably going to say something I shouldn't, or I'm going to snap a little bit or whatever,
Yeah.
and they'll usually redirect it real quick. I've got great people that I work with day to day that have great intervention strategies to prevent me from owing somebody a big old apology.
We call them your PR team.
Yeah,
Is that
yeah.
is that what we're
It's
gonna call
basically
'em?
like,
Yeah.
let me take this one. Yeah,
Yeah.
and but anyways, they took me back to the police department, put me in a room, squad room, and they're just like, "Hey, just chill for a while, man." And I'm sitting there like, "Oh shit, what did I do? Am I gonna get fired? Am I gonna, like, that was bad?" Um, and I'm not sure how long I was sitting there. Not a terrible long time. My captain, so the guy that's in charge of the whole patrol division, he comes and sits down, and he's like, there was not a "how are you doing" or "I'm sorry that happened" or anything like that. He told me, he's like, "if that ever happens again, you're fired."
Wow.
And so from that very moment, unpacking everything, I now know that from that very moment, this um, conscientious decision, whatever, subconscious decision, I should say, was, hey, Josh, you can't feel anymore. Feeling is bad.
Yeah.
Um, and and that is exactly the way I worked very successfully, but very unhealthily for the next, you know, whatever,
13.
16 years,
Yeah, 16 years. Yeah.
of don't. So every time, don't, I'm like, I can't deal with this one and even everything else. So, gruesome murder scenes, baby deaths, child porn, um, any number of things that are tough situations. Just don't, don't acknowledge, don't take the time to allow how you feel to even like come into your conscience.
Yeah.
Don't feel, just don't feel.
Yeah.
Um, and in some ways, more like turn up the psi. Let's make things more, the harder the better versus hey.
Yeah.
And
So this carried all the way over until, you're a chief of police. You're having, did anyone else know about any of these feelings you were having?
no, no,
Yeah.
um, no. I mean, nobody did, and I felt very much. I felt the need to protect that because I still had this. If I ever do this again, I can't feel. I had this. Now that I look about it, this silly block, but it was ingrained in me.
Yeah.
You can't talk to anybody about any of this stuff. And, we didn't, culturally, nobody really talked about how they felt on stuff like that. And more often than not, if there's any after action discussion about any particular event, it's more with the dark humor
Yeah.
than with, hey, that was a bad one. And how are you guys, you know, and how can we, after action, or deconstruct it in any way. None of that was even in the game, even really discussed about. Like every once in a while, you'd have a critical incident debrief, like if a coworker was killed or something like that. But other than that, it's like, the day to day whatever scenes and stuff
They weren't
apparently
talking.
weren't important
Yeah.
enough.
Yeah.
Were dismissed as just part of the job. And we so yeah, it was very much a break, and it was secretive at first. Like I felt the need to be very secret about what I was doing, but not too far into my visits, I decided after one of them that I wasn't going to keep it a secret anymore. Um, my wife at the time, I'm divorced now, but my wife knew I was going. But I let my kids know I was going, and then I let my coworkers know I was going, and it was kind of a fun joke that I spearheaded probably more than anybody. Of hey, every Wednesday afternoon at 4, the chief's going to get the air pressure checked in his head,
Yeah.
kind of a thing. And I didn't. That's everybody knew that was very much part of my week every week, and the amazing thing that came from that, though, is in a department of 15 individuals, myself being one of them as police officers, within the first couple of months of being open about it, 7 of those other guys, so 50% of everybody else that's a police officer over there, had a talk with me about wellness issues, and hey, I think maybe I could benefit from something like that. Or I've been dealing with something for years, and being somebody who's in fairly intensive therapy myself at the time, and not knowing a whole lot of answers, it's like, okay, it started charging me into, okay, I want to understand more about all of this for myself, but also the fact that it's like, hey, I'm responsible for these guys too, you know. Yeah, I'm accountable for their official actions and stuff like that, but also I feel I'm feeling this strong sense of accountability for their wellness and what are they taking home to their families and what you know things like that. And so we created our own little uh, wellness program, if you will. Well, I told them all, I'm like, if you need to talk to somebody, let me know, uh, and I will work out a thing so that therapist can bill me, and we'll kind of keep an alphanumeric code, if you will, of who you are on those invoices, so that I'm approving these invoices to be paid, but accounts payable over at City Hall and stuff like that. There's no name attached to any of these. And I told my city manager, I said, this is something I'm doing.
It wasn't a
And
question.
no,
Yeah, it was a statement.
and it was, we were kind of doing this pay as you go. So, I'm taking a little money from here or there or whatever to pay for these things. And he was generally pretty supportive of it. And it actually evolved into one where it's like, no, I think what we're going to do is everybody's going to have uh, 2 visits a year.
And so that is Linden still, or this
Yeah,
is
we're still
now
in Linden.
still in Linden?
We're
Okay.
still in Linden. I'm
Yeah.
still planning on retiring in a few months.
Yeah. Leave your mark per
Yeah,
se, a
and I'm
little.
like, hey, and so that's early 2020, and as COVID now is breaking out, I'm separated in the process of divorcing. The situation in Minnesota, everything like that, where now our country is very hyper aware of policing and defunding and all this kind of stuff, and then at that same time, the chief of police in my original agency in Orem retired, and then so I've got friends and associates from my career that are like, "Hey, come up, put in for this one." And in my mind, it's like, I'm retiring,
Yeah.
but the experience of being able to restore myself to a better person and still be working on that right now. But that change from, being leaving there, being brought to a much better environment and then crashing because of what was there, that same sense of, hey, I want to help over there too.
Yeah.
Um, and I'll be honest with you, every day it's like, what was I thinking?
Of course. Yeah,
Um,
of course.
you
Well,
know, and so I did. I applied. I
yeah.
went through the selection process. I got appointed as the chief of police over there. So I went from having, 15 people working for me to having over 100 sworn, and then a dispatch center and records and evidence, and I mean somewhere in the neighborhood of 160 people now. And
But even over there, you've been able to make your mark in the wellness scene. It seems like,
yeah,
you know.
the chief that was in front of me was very pro these types of things too, but it was still very much, and as it is today, I mean, it's still evolving. There's still, people that are in, administrative level positions like this, executive positions. Are like, what do we do? What's the right answer? And how do we qualify on budgets and everything like that? How do we help our people? And I have these discussions all the time with other chiefs of police and sheriffs and stakeholders, like, what do we do? And how do we win the financing war and stuff like that to pay for all of these things? And so that's brought together for me a whole lot of new desire to help. I think I'm doing a decent, hopefully better than adequate job of operationally running our police department and stuff. But there's things like that where it's like, we can make policing, if our society, which is demanding more of our policing, wants that, and if they have a realistic expectation, or if we all together have a realistic expectation that we can do this, we need to improve our people. We need to bring in the best we can, and then we have to keep them. And part of keeping them, just like a vehicle or anything else, is good maintenance. If you
Yeah.
maintain your car, if you do a great job of maintaining your car, the odds are that car is going to operate very well long into the future and not have catastrophic breakdowns on the side of highways and stuff like that, because we're doing the work, we're doing the maintenance, we're keeping it as optimal as it can be. And what we have not done as an industry is give two shits about that optimal wellness thing of our officers, until now. All of a sudden, we're dealing with it, perhaps at a bit of a crisis point where we now have people leaving as quick as they can. We have people that are making mistakes in their lives that cost them their ability to work in this industry. And we have people that are coming in, getting a taste for it and being like, this is too hard, or
Yeah.
I can't see myself doing this for 25 years and surviving and being okay. And then obviously the biggest group are people that look at it like, I wouldn't touch that kind of work with a 10-foot pole. You know, when our society's being presented with, hey, there's a lot of great jobs where a person can wake up at 9 o'clock, go to Starbucks, get a latte, come back home and flip open the lid to their
Yeah.
laptop and have an effective work day there.
Wouldn't that be the dream?
Yeah, why the hell? Why, and what we're selling people is, hey, we have a location you have to come to. We have a schedule you're going to have to follow. We have a uniform you're going to have to wear, and we have very, very high level of scrutiny and performance expectations, and unknowns and hazards physically and emotionally and stuff like that. Uh, that's kind of, how do you sell that,
Yeah. It's
to
not.
people, and that's where, by and large, nearly any police department in this country probably has unfilled vacancies, because they don't have, uh, either they don't have qualified candidates or they don't even have candidates.
Yeah. Well,
You
I
know,
think, I mean, tell me if I'm wrong, but majority of the time, I think when people start, it's because they want to help people.
absolutely.
I still firmly believe that that's how they feel when they come in. But then, after time, they find out it's just different than that.
Yeah.
It's just not that expect. It's not all about helping people. It's a tough job, mentally, physically, spiritually, all of those things. And so, you know, so correct me if I'm wrong, but now what you've moved into in Orem is for wellness, which has been, I think, the first initiative in the state to do this. Is you have brought on an EAP like type company and mandated 2 visits a year, uh, as well, right? Is that generally correct?
Yeah, yeah. So myself and my counterpart at the fire department, the fire chief, is very like-minded in that way, and we both felt, and he got hired just a few months before me, so we're both kind of a new administrative group in public safety as a whole. We felt like this was something that we had to tackle, and we
Yeah.
needed to, and so, our city had a traditional EAP where it's like, hey, here's a counseling service down the street here, and
Six
you're,
visits a
yeah,
year.
6 visits a year.
Yeah.
And I actually went to one of those, I don't know, 10 years ago when I first, you know, started to have a few issues, that were still for me, very manageable at the time. But I remember talking to this therapist woman who was probably in her early 20s. I don't even think she was married or a mother or anything like that. She had been, she'd been through the school and had the accreditation and everything like
Yeah.
that. But I'm telling her what I thought was a fairly routine anecdotal story from work, and I can see the trauma that it is
Yeah.
inducing into her.
Her eyes get
And it's like,
wide,
yeah,
and
and it's
yeah.
like, holy shit, I'm sitting here trying to help this. I'm sitting here trying to get help, and I'm messing her up.
Yeah.
What now? She's got to go to a therapist because she talked to me.
Yeah.
And so again, that kind of and finding out, talking to other people, yeah, kind of the same thing where it's like, number one, they don't have it. They're not really giving me any tools to work with other than, you want to take some Xanax or something.
And who doesn't?
Well, I mean, but it's like, I think and I think one of the challenges that we have in this industry too is part of our compulsion, if you will, is to be a problem solver, and medication can be part of that solution. But when it's just this band-aid to cover up the problem, where it's like, yeah, are there people that need to take certain medications? I take certain medications, as part of my overall strategy.
Mm-hmm.
But if it's, hey, 1, 2 visits into this EAP and they're recommending you for a medication, it's like that's a band-aid approach to a
Yeah.
deeper problem. And as cops particularly, where we're kind of, we look at everything through multiple lenses and stuff like that, people were calling bullshit on it, and with good cause. And frankly being like, well, I can go drink a couple of shots and get the same effect.
Yeah.
So why the hell am I going to deal with medication and side effects and stuff like that, where I can just get drunk every night and be fine?
Yeah. No, totally.
And so yeah, we had that. So the first thing we did is we got rid of that, and we were able to take to our city government, hey, we need better. And so what we did is we uh, hunted down and had presentations, so forth, from multiple different companies that were in the wellness industry. And we went with one called Stepstone, that is all of their clinicians are meet first responder specific industry standards. Most of them are actually retired or former military or fire or police. The fellow I've talked to, retired cop out of Phoenix, lives in Arizona. It's all telehealth,
Yeah.
which isn't always the best, but it's always accessible and they can attend to us. It's better than, hey, I need to talk to somebody and you're calling an office. They can get you in a couple of weeks. My people, generally speaking, aren't waiting even 24 hours usually before they're having a conversation with their person.
Love it.
And they get to select the people based on their bios and stuff like that. And so, yeah, what our package deal is us mandating that all of our people have to do that twice a year. That's a wellness, not a fit for duty or anything like that, but hey, they're going to check in on our time and our dime with a clinician.
Yeah.
And even if it's that they just sit there and stare at each other through their webcams, I don't care. They're doing it.
Yeah.
Because I believe that if we coerce, compel, whatever word you want to use, them to take that first step, the uptake is going to be much more significant than just telling people, hey, we've got this service, and if something's wrong with you, go get help.
Yeah.
Instead, it's talk to somebody about what's happening with you and find out whether or not you need more or less. So the package is for them, for their significant others, for their children. It does have some limitations, but we haven't even run into, in our usage thus far, which has been about a year now, we haven't even come close to hitting any of those issues. And there's been several very positive outcomes with that, where, and they very carefully craft this thing so that I am completely walled off from any information whatsoever. This is professional help.
Yeah. And that's the best part about it, in my opinion, is that these people are getting the help without, the people upstairs' knowledge.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, they pay for it, but they're not,
Yeah.
They don't need to know. You don't need to know.
A couple of positive examples that we've experienced just in this short time is there's been twice where, the gal that runs that's our affiliate, my point of contact, if you will. She's called, hey, how you doing? How are things going? Great. She's like, listen, one of your officers that's either a male or a female is in their conversations with their clinician has disclosed certain concerns and stuff that have led this clinician to believe that this person needs some specific specialized care along the lines of an IOP
Something along.
program.
Yeah, yeah,
And that, IOP isn't enumerated within our contract and stuff. So she's like, so if you will approve it, we will begin that process right now with that person, so that we're potentially, this interdictive strategy prevents this person, where their next step is probably that they would need to be in an inpatient recovery treatment program. And it's realistically, it's pennies on the dollar compared to what it does cost for the more
yeah.
advanced levels of care. So I said yes.
There
I
it
got
is.
a bill.
Yeah.
I paid it, and somebody went to IOP.
And somebody stayed on.
And they're still there. They never missed. They never missed. I mean,
Yeah.
the with the telehealth piece and stuff like that. I mean, we've literally got people. This person was probably perhaps even on duty.
Yeah.
It goes and sits out in their squad car if they're a patrol officer, and parked in the shade somewhere and had a session.
Yeah. It's great.
And I don't know.
Yeah. Good.
And I don't get to know. And there's nothing where I would know anything other than, okay, I'm trusting them to tell me if there's more or less of anything going on. And so we've had that happen twice now with in the IOP specific space of getting that help. So, it's still in its infancy. This is still a huge cultural, shift to focusing on these things. But, we're really trying to up, not just the, hey, wellness and clinicians and stuff like that, but hey, physical.
Yeah.
Please exercise, please work out. Here's how much time we can allocate you of your own work week to work out. Here's the facilities we can provide you. Here is, we have a couple of rooms now where when people are tired, they are welcome to take a 30-minute meditative nap, whatever you want to call it, every shift. Those things are they're slow to embrace those things, because there's kind of this cultural faux pas about, oh, I'm going to take a nap.
Yeah.
What kind of a wuss takes a nap on duty? And it's like, well, bless the firefighters' hearts, but they do it every day.
Exactly. Yeah.
So why can't you crash for a few minutes, or at least just sit in a dark space and no radio, no phone, and meditate, relax, download. And so that's that, things like that.
So you brushed briefly on the inpatient portion. And so for those of you who don't know listening, I do work for Shatso Recovery, one of 6 FOP approved facilities in the country. And so you've also been involved in doing wellness for officers at Chateau from across the country.
Yes.
And so, I mean, do you feel like the similar issues that you're seeing with your officers are the same that, people nationally are doing? Yeah.
Virtually everybody I interact with in groups and on an individual basis, whatever, up there from all over the country, they're curious, and we talk about their department, their culture, their situation, and then they ask questions about mine, and some of them are downright pissed off that it's like, well, why the hell would mine not, why didn't anybody think of this before and stuff like that? And
or they're the first one from their department to seek treatment.
And that's, we use the metaphor very frequently is, hey, you're the first one to run through the wall. Yeah, you're going to be the one that got bloody.
Yeah.
But now you created a hole in the wall for other people to go through.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, we see that with a fair amount of frequency of, they have a peer who's in recovery and succeeding in recovery, and they came because they saw, hey, this is actually, I can do this.
Yeah.
And take these restorative measures and still, continue on in my life. Some people, it's been interesting. I mean, there's been a number of people where they've been up there and they're the people that, the eligibility to retire has come and gone. They're still in the industry and going through, that process. They've been like, they're it's now's a good time to, as part of my recovery, to kind of set my identity as a firefighter, my identity as a paramedic, my identity as a police officer aside, and go do something that I have an actual passion for and stuff like
Yeah.
that. So when you talk about that whole recovery restoration thing, it's a lot of different light bulbs that are getting turned back on in people's minds to a whole new world of living and living well. And where, in my space right now and with the people that work for me, it's like we're trying not to burn those light bulbs out.
Yeah.
Let's let those light bulbs burn as long and as bright as they can. And if we need to swap out, maintenance wise, swap out light bulbs, fine. But it's these people where I feel like they have this candelabra of and they were down to the last bulb in a chandelier, where it's like, hey, we could have been swapping out one bulb at a time, and this would have always been a full operational, chandelier.
Yeah.
Versus, hey, now that all the bulbs are burned out, let's change them.
Yeah. Well, you've got great points. I think you've been pretty instrumental in, at least in Utah. I think, well, I mean, especially with the clients that you treat at Chateau. I mean, nationally now, you've been instrumental in people's wellness and officers' wellness. Every facet of first responders. I think that's all the time that we have for today. But this has been. I mean, it's been great. I think the information in this is really valuable for those that, whether it's a peer support person listening or just, on duty officer sitting waiting for something to happen. I think this can be instrumental in helping people realize that it's okay not to be okay, and it's okay to seek help, and things are changing slowly. I think that we'll continue in this podcast to cover different topics in the first responder world, whether it's, anything from wellness to the struggle of getting, new officers on duty, whatever it may be. But we're here to try and educate those who just don't know yet. So, Chief, thank you very much for taking your time. We'll hope to get you on here every episode, and or interview those from out of state, whatever it may be. But really appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to this segment of No One Fights Alone. No One Fights Alone is sponsored by
Chateau Recovery and First Responder Trauma Counselors. Chateau Recovery is a 16-bed treatment facility nestled in the foothills of the Wasatch Mountains in Midway, Utah. Chateau's First Responder Resiliency Program is designed to treat the unique challenges and issues that first responders encounter in the course of their careers. Chateau's comprehensive and highly individualized approach to treatment addresses more than just the presenting issues. It addresses the why. Each of their seasoned, trauma-trained, and culturally competent therapists utilize evidence-based, specialized therapies to treat trauma at its core and enable clients to begin the healing process while developing a resilient and healthy relationship with stress. Chateau Recovery is trusted by departments and agencies from around the country to treat responders and veterans. In fact, it is one of only a handful of facilities nationwide that is vetted and approved to treat members of the Fraternal Order of Police. For more information, or to speak to a representative, go to chateaurecovery.com or call 888-507-5031.
No One Fights Alone is also sponsored by First Responder Trauma Counselors. First Responder Trauma Counselors are subject matter experts in proactive behavioral health care for frontline workers through their National Peer Support Academy. This 40-hour all badges, all uniforms, and all scrubs educational experience helps to create caring, honest, and empathetic peer support relationships with your fellow frontline workers. The FRTC National Peer Support Academy is taught by actual first responders who have gone back to school to become culturally competent, licensed behavioral health clinicians that teach from lived experiences, not just theories from books. This fast-paced, immersive educational academy will not just change your life, it will help you save the lives of others. For additional details, visit 991overwatch.org or call 970-222-419-3. This could be the most life-changing academy you'll ever attend.